publish an article like that and the fact that this is supposed to be something that should be part of people's imagination or consciousness, I find that incredibly boring. You know, they're creating a very boring society, a society that has no fun, no joy, no eros, right? Like we've mentioned in previous, our previous conversations. Nothing to live for, in a way. That's not a life. That's not even an existence.
Welcome to the New Flesh Podcast, the podcast you deserve. My name is Jonathan Asher. With me is Ricky Allpike. Ricky, just how are you?
I'm great, thanks. I'm excited because we've got one of our, a friend of the show returning again, Emina Melonic. We love having her on, and I'm pumped.
Yes, we talked about a whole bunch of things, it's always a free-ranging delight. So let's get into it.
New Flesh regular Emina Melonic is an adjunct fellow of the Center of American Greatness. She is an unabashed cinephile and holds a Ph.D. in Comparative Literature and 3 master's degrees in Humanities and Theology. Her work as a writer and critic has appeared in American Greatness, The Spectator, Law and Liberty, The New Criterion, The American Mind, National Review, and many more. Her last appearance on this show was in February 2023. That's episode 192 for those playing at home, where we discussed the death of Eros, amongst other things. Emina, welcome back to the New Flesh.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So, Emina, you recently wrote about the speediness of William F. Buckley Jr.'s writing, a piece that we saw online. Apparently, he reportedly wrote his weekly column in 20 minutes. Can you give us a bit of a crash course on who William F. Buckley was?
So Buckley was I guess you could call him a journalist. He was sort of a philosopher too, although most conservatives will not say that, I would say. He started a National Review in 1955, I believe, and also had a television program called Firing Line. And what he would do is he would invite both conservatives and liberals on the show, and they would discuss ideas. And the guests that he had, it was a wide variety, really. And I think it was only him that was able to really bring a complete radical leftist and try to have a conversation with that person. But he was very, very successful. He wrote, oh my goodness, how many books? Probably 30, 40 books. And then after he moved away a little bit from politics and wrote spy novels as well. Lots of travel writing also. He sailed a lot, so a lot of his stuff is on stories about sailing. So really kind of, I guess you could call him a father of the conservative movement in America. And was most likely, other conservative scholars probably have more, how should I put it, more clearer understanding on his political impact when it comes to Ronald Reagan's presidency. But he certainly, I think the flourishing of the conservative movement through William F. Buckley Jr. really happened. The pinnacle of it really happened with Ronald Reagan being elected.
Has Buckley been cancelled?
That's a good question. He's been ignored, I think. Honestly, I think he's ignored. I think a lot of conservatives are, because conservatism in America doesn't even exist right now, I would say. It's very fragmented. It's been fragmented for a while now. And with Buckley, a lot of conservatives who have particularly worked with him think we can go back to that kind of conservatism in America, more intellectual conservatism. And so there's a kind of reverence or perhaps even worship of Buckley in that regard. Then you have younger generation who's completely ignoring him and saying we can't learn anything from Buckley. So I think you have these two factions, generational probably, mainly. One is a boomer generation, the other one, well, I don't really know what to call them. Are they millennials, perhaps? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe even younger than that, who who are saying we should just move on from that completely. It's time for a different kind of conservatism. So I love Buckley. He's one of my kindred spirits, if you will. I love his writing. He's a very very intelligent writer, and the reason I called him a philosopher is because he was never philosophically or metaphysically confused. He understood what the order of things is, and he brought that, all of it, into his discussions and also in his writing. And I think there's a lot to learn from him. No, we are not. People always say that, where's the next Buckley? Who's the new Buckley? Buckley is unrepeatable. That sort of time era in America is really gone. I don't know. I still think that we can somehow blend in populist conservatism with intellectual tradition of conservatism. I don't think it's not going to be easy, given everything what's going on. But I sort of am kind of in the middle of that position where I don't think that we can go back to it, but to deny the past and to say we can do this better, I think that's very foolish.
Was Buckley important to you personally? I think you mentioned him in your first published piece in National Review, and when I was reading it, I thought about you, coming from Bosnia, and at what point you might have encountered his work, and whether this kind of guy was, influential to you.
I honestly actually don't remember when was the first time I read him. I don't remember the moment. Maybe a friend introduced me to his work. But it was, at first, actually, it was mainly the firing line episodes. I read some of his stuff, some of the essays. I also, I think, read very early on Michael Oakeshott, who's one of my favorite philosophers, essay called On Being Conservative. And Oakeshott was a huge influence on Buckley. It almost, he sort of started this whole idea that conservatism is a disposition and not an ideology. And Buckley definitely followed that principle. But I liked his ease of relating to people on firing line, the way he would have conversations with somebody who is not only on a complete opposite political identity spectrum, but sometimes even radical people that are making no sense, but he was able to somehow get something out of them. It was a civilized conversation, because I don't think he would permit an uncivilized dialogue. And there's so many of those famous conversations. And one was with Hugh Hefner, which is from 1960, maybe, very early on. And Buckley was always very, very calm. He took his time. I think he had kind of anxiety, so I think he purposely kind of slowed things down a little bit for himself, and didn't have any problem agreeing with his enemy, with the opposition, when he needed to agree. But he definitely destroyed Hefner's arguments, for Playboy and stuff like that. However, he did do an interview for Playboy. Buckley did do that in I think, is it a 1968? I don't remember. It's either late 60s or early 70s. He actually did an interview for Playboy, and they asked him. They said, how, during the interview, they said, how is it possible that you're actually, here doing this interview? And Buckley said, well, I think it's probably the only way my son is going to read my work.
You got to go to where the readers are.
It does sound as though this sort of interview style is quite refreshing. When you look at the kind of style that we have nowadays, that is very combative to a point where quite often different sides of the political spectrum just won't even come together to have any sort of discussion, because they don't want that combative situation. It just sounds really refreshing to me.
Yes, and I think people still share these episodes. They watch them, they share them. Oh, look at this one. It's a classic, right? Everybody is very excited about it. And Hoover Institution out of Stanford. Yes, I think so. They have the archive of all firing line episodes. You can buy the DVDs. I have a few, but they're all available on YouTube, all these episodes. And they've been digitized, restored. And I think people go back to it because they actually do want to see. They want to see and hear a discussion about ideas. And you really don't get that now. You get a lot of ideology. But I think mostly the debates today, which I'm not really sure if you can call them debates, right? I think it's a lot of fear and a lot of yelling. And I don't know if that's by design. I'm not saying that none of this existed even in Buckley's time. There's a really fairly good documentary called Best of Enemies. I don't know if you either of you have seen it, but it is about the relationship, or not really a relationship, and certainly not a friendship, between Buckley and Gore Vidal. And in 1967, I think, don't quote me on the date, but there was a Democratic National Convention. And ABC at that time asked Buckley and Vidal, asked Buckley to cover it and to have a debate. And he agreed to have this debate on it with Gore Vidal. And there were 10 debates. Now, Vidal was a provocateur, and that's like putting it nicely, right? He was just a kind of a great writer, but a kind of a slimy human being. And so he pushed Buckley to that edge because Buckley was always very, very civilized. And by the 10th debate, he started to call him names. So he called Buckley crypto-fascist, or crypto-Nazi, something like that. Sorry, I think it's
I don't know what
crypto-Nazi.
But I don't like it.
Yes.
I said, I don't know what it means, but I don't like it.
Right. So he said, Buckley responded and said, listen to me, you queer, I'm going to punch you in the face, right? Which is just never, absolutely, he regretted it for the rest of his life because he absolutely never did that. But Vidal pushed him to it. So there is that one moment, I think, in the media in the past where obviously the network wanted something, some kind of controversy. And it did exist before. But I think that a force like Buckley, wouldn't continue obviously to play into that, but because firing line did just fine even after that sort of slip up, if you will. So
now, in our podcast within a podcast, Side Boob Cinema, we recently reviewed two films that were made very quickly. The first being the Fassbender film Ali, Fear Eats the Soul, as well as Oliver Stone's The Doors. I think Fassbender's film was shot in about 14 days, and the Doors film was kind of rushed through post-production so that Oliver Stone could start working on JFK. And both of these films have their flaws, but I think the reason why they're so special is that the directors didn't have time to endlessly think about the direction of the picture. They just had to get it done. They were working on instinct and didn't really have time to second guess anything. Do you think that sometimes creating something quickly, whether that's, film or writing or something else, makes for better art?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, there were so many great films that were made in a record time. There's a B movie. Well, it's considered a B movie called The Detour. It's a kind of a noir film, and I think it was made, I believe, in 3 weeks or something like that. And it's a really good film. So I think that, I don't think necessarily taking too long. I suppose it depends on the form, right? On the art form of what it is. Perhaps the movie takes longer. I've never made a film, but I would imagine that that it takes a lot more effort than writing a book, or certainly than writing an article. But you could also agonize over it, right? If that's the other side of it, that you can just constantly overthink it and then be left with a shell of a work, right?
I think for film, particularly at the start of the film, so that in the writing stage and then possibly in post production is where you can eat up a lot of time, just back and forth. trying things out or second guessing yourself.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but then if you rush it too much, maybe you missed something. I know that, for example, uh, the Back to the Future trilogy, Robert Zemeckis said that because he was editing Back to the Future 2 while he was filming Back to the Future 3, and you can you can tell that there's a lot of missing things in number 2. uh, and I think he'll be the first one to admit it. It was just rushed. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think it can happen depending on the artist.
There's a good, interesting current example of this. Another terrible film, which I keep bringing up, and you never mention anything about it, which I really respect about Jemina. It's called Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. They've been editing this movie for, it seems like years, and apparently they shot it like a video game. They just didn't know what they would do because there's no one person behind it. There's just a creepy corporate cabal behind this film. They have just shot all of this footage, and now they've been editing and re-editing based on sort of the hate rage tubers that have commented about it. So we get this interesting, since you mentioned Back to the Future, it got me thinking about Spielberg and about this example of, what do you think of that kind of thing of editing ad infinitum and reshooting and it's still turning out with a silly film.
So they've been doing this for a while. Then this Indiana Jones. Okay, all right. Well, I really, the fact that, which number? This is number 5. Indiana Jones.
Yes, that's you're
5, right?
forgiven for not remembering, but yes, it is
Yes.
number
Well,
5.
okay. As far as I'm concerned, there is Indiana Jones 1, 2, and 3, and the rest we don't really care about. Like I love Harrison Ford, and Indiana Jones is. I have such great memories of watching those films when I was a kid, in Bosnia, and that it doesn't even matter to me if they're a little bit sloppy in some areas or whatever, and they are, but it just doesn't matter. But this, once they went into 4, and now with this, it just makes no sense to me. I love Harrison Ford, but and if I saw an interview with him the other day, and he said he really enjoyed it, and I mean I'm glad he did, but at the same time, I'm not sure whether we should be subject to that.
Well,
And go ahead.
he's changed his tune there, because back in the day he couldn't stop moaning on about how much he hated Han Solo, and I don't know if it was the same for Indiana Jones, but he despised some of these lovable roles that people grew up with.
Yes, he can be quite cantankerous, right? He's kind of a cranky guy, which is maybe part of his charm. He doesn't have any patience for idiocy, and but at the same time, um, crankiness once crankiness leaves the charming, sphere, then he's just a grumpy old man, right? So
But
from what
doesn't
I
it
understand,
also, the fact that he's more accepting now, it sort of feels like, because I liked it when he was, doing Witness and, presumed innocent, working with, trying to do drama and really branching out in the 80s, working with Polanski, like,
right?
and, uh, and then and sort of this attitude of all these silly films, and the fact that now that he's doing these nostalgia bait films, and it sort of feels like he's just feeling like someone's going to turn the lights off any second now, and he's getting really maudlin and and he's lost that thing, and that's why he's just doing these embarrassing retirement home versions of these old characters and putting us all through it. And oh, man, I miss those. We talked about intellectuals, Buckley having his show, but I miss Harrison Ford on these chat shows, like just saying, like he just had no time for it. Bring me back that guy. I'm sick of I hate it when our artists become, I'm going to swear now, Emina, they become such pussies.
Yes, yes. Because I always thought of Harrison Ford as a kind of guy who doesn't suffer any fools, right? He just uh, that's what I certainly respected in him, and I liked him, for example, in What Lies Beneath. That is a perfect movie in every way. And I wish he would do perhaps more stuff like that. Now, he is facing, how old is he? 80, 81, something like that, right?
80. Yep.
80, right? So he is in a bonus round, I guess you could say. So he's facing his mortality, and I can't even imagine, but I, but it's still, you can still do deeper things than maybe this. I don't. But they asked him in this interview, was one of those morning shows, ABC morning shows with George Stephanopoulos, one of those mainstream things. And they asked him, what will he, the questions, first of all, were so mind-numbingly stupid. And you can tell that Ford was really irritated by it, and I don't blame him in that sense. But they asked him, what will he miss most about this character, meaning Indiana Jones? And he just stood, sat there in silence, and there was a kind of very uncomfortable silence. And then he said, nothing. So
That's perfect.
So I think so. Actually, it kind of, I saw a bit of that passion there. So I think that was really good. I mean, he did praise everybody's work on it, and meaning that they all worked very hard, and there was a sense of friendship or blah blah blah, stuff like that, which is great, But
I
I
hate
don't
that.
know.
I hate that. I mean, I don't care how hard they worked. I want it to be an amazing, well,
You don't care about friendship. What kind of a person are you?
no, I care about it in, it's that old thing, like I think I've got more of a Werner Herzog attitude about it, where it's just like, I want it to have destroyed the world, but it to have been a good film.
Yes, yes. See, you live for art, and there you go. No, I mean, I'm too nice, I think, so I shouldn't. My tolerance for a lot of these things is too high. Perhaps I need to be a little more like you. I should just say, no, this is stupid. We don't care.
I
But
change later.
but
Don't
no,
change.
yeah. But no, I mean, yes, sure, I'm glad, but at the same time, why are we subject to this? I guess, and also there are no great personalities. I mean, when you think about great actors, when you think about Indiana Jones with Sean Connery, I mean, that's a great movie, because you have these strong actors that are um, living a very much embodied life. And I think that's really what's sort of missing from today. So any sort of action adventure movie, I think it will be missing that component. As much as Harrison Ford is a very masculine man, he still looks like a man. I think that the essence of today's age is denying that, and it will do anything, even maybe unintentionally, to deny or to move us away from that sort of embodiment. So obviously I haven't seen this one. It's not available yet, right? It's in the theaters later. I don't remember when. I saw the
No,
trailer
it hasn't
for
come
it.
out yet, but it
Hasn't
got
come out.
some dreadful Cannes reviews just came
Oh,
out, I
really?
think,
Okay.
and it's been
Okay.
roasted by even some fairly woke publications.
Oh, wow. Okay. So bad movie.
So what's this space?
Well, on a somewhat related topic here, Amina, I'm not sure if you saw this fake article that was published in the Irish Times recently. So basically, they published an opinion column titled "Irish Women's Obsession with Fake Tan is Problematic," which was created, I believe, by a student prankster using the AI platform ChatGPT. Now, the Irish Times later apologised, but not about the content of the article, but for how lax their protocols were for journalists submitting work to their publication. Now, this is a pretty funny story, but it does highlight how easy it is to pop in some keywords and have an article written for you fairly quickly. Do you think we'll have to start vetting everything we read for fear it was written by Chat GPT?
GPT, maybe. Well, we should be aware of the reputations of people, right? We should be aware. They've done this before with academic journal articles, where they've just it wasn't this what is it called, Chat GPT, right? It wasn't with that. It was with some other program, and they just published an article under an assumed name. It was basically a group of people, and it made no sense. I mean, it made sense in the academic world, right? Because everything is gibberish. And so it's been done before, right? And in this case, a little bit less intellectually minded. But no, I actually think that everybody is too relaxed about these things. Something comes up on Twitter or any other platform, people immediately think it's true. They never really say, okay, who posted this? Why did they post it? Where's this video from? Is this video from 10 years ago, or is this from 10 minutes ago, as they're claiming? So you really, I think, have to be very much aware of several layers, I think, of reality when you're reading these things and watching them. And I read this article in the Irish Times, and so I think actually, that's what gets you for even publishing an article like that. To be honest with you, it's almost like, why would a reputable publication even talk about tan? I guess, I mean, it's pathetic, right?
But these are the kind of stories that you're seeing pop up a lot, though. I mean, there are endless articles out there, particularly on the Guardian, that say stuff like, oh, we've got a whiteness problem, or so and
Right.
so has a problem with cultural appropriation, or talking about kimonos, or
we need to talk about kimonos, or we need to talk
yeah.
about I don't know, eyeliner or something.
Eyeliner? Is
Well,
that what you
I
said?
don't know. That's next, I think. Yeah.
Well, they would probably claim that some indigenous tribe out there invented eyeliner or something, and if you're
Oh,
a
that's
white
right.
person wearing eyeliner, it's just cultural
Then
appropriation.
Ricky is
You
like
know,
the Chat GPT of wokeness.
yeah, yeah.
He
Oh.
knows. He knows you could write the article.
But I feel like these articles would be so easy to write, though, like, because you only have to go so far back in history before you get to a point where you can kind of ascribe a certain style of fashion or music or whatever it is to a particular race or country, and then bam, there you go. There's your problematic article that you can pop up on the Irish Times. But I'm just surprised that this wasn't a bigger story. That the fact that it was so easy to write the article, the fact that the article is almost indistinguishable from all those other woke articles that you see out
What's
there.
the point of the
Right.
Guardian article that wrote about this article? Like, that's what I want to know. Like, so the Guardian wrote a report. Well, I guess we'll say they reported on this story. So I'm confused as to why the Guardian would even report on this story, because the thing is, seemingly the article that the fake article resembles a lot of their articles, for starters. And I don't know, is this like a weird UK Ireland thing, sticking it to the Irish or something? I was so I thought it was really strange.
I really think that we are wasting so much time, or these news outlets, whatever, they're wasting so much time focusing on these nitty gritty fake problems. I still think what this is an overabundance of safety, in a way, and of wealth. I think these are really sort of a first world invented issues. And I do think that we are at the point in our society, until all of this started kind of breaking in a way into chaos, we were at the point where people are generally, for the most part, not poor. You're able to, live a good life. You are fairly safe. Everybody, obviously, this is generally speaking, right? There are many different circumstances, but there's just there came a point, I think, where we are, you could say, somewhat enlightened in how we relate to each other. And then all these ideologues thought to themselves, you know what? There's not enough chaos in the world. Why don't we just do some of that right now and just come up with issues that don't even exist? Um, I don't know. I find that to be a first world problem. It's really not a problem, right? They've made it into a problem, but uh, to even publish an article like that, and the fact that this is supposed to be something that should be part of people's imagination or consciousness, I find that incredibly boring. They're creating a very boring society, a society that has no fun, no joy, no eros, right? Like we've mentioned in previous, our previous conversations. Nothing to live for, in a way. That's not a life. That's not even an existence, I think.
Well, we spoke to Spencer Clavin recently. It was an absolutely fascinating discussion, and one of the ideas he sort of hatched is this idea of the furniture of the mind. We asked him about his monthly memorization of poetry, and why he does that. And he said he's trying to create or trying to curate the furniture of his mind. He would rather be able to recall lines of John Donne and Keats, in moments of, but in moments between moments, rather than conjuring up cat videos and fight videos and snippets of porn and sort of this. And you've talked about this before as well. This idea of getting lost in the slipstream of nonsense on your social media feed. So it just becomes it sort of it melds everything from cat videos and images of Roma films to just like a snatch of music, and then just someone getting beaten to death on a train in New York or something, and it becomes this totally meaningless space that you're living in. And so, what do you think about this idea of the furniture of your mind?
I like that. Spencer's great. He's a great thinker, and he's also a really nice guy. I know, he probably will not want me to say that because he has a reputation to keep up, but I've met him once, and just a really decent, kind person. So everything that he says, it's not just intellectual. In intellectual theories or theorizing. He definitely is like that in action as well. Um, so, but I agree. I really do agree with that. I think it's amazing, what he does with the memorization. I certainly could never do that. But he, in many ways, is invoking the ancients, right? By doing that. That's how things were done. Also, they were given um, orally. They were moved from one generation to the other in such a way through this oral tradition. So, but yes, I don't think that we think about how we are spending our time. If we are opening up a book, reading something, or I don't know, cleaning a bathroom. Honestly, it can be extremely ordinary things, and sometimes that's even better. Where you are kind of laboring in a good way, right? Every single day. I mean, I fail, I try to do it as much as I can, but I think just to be aware of how this time is spent. And bigger question, I think, is who is the time being controlled by? Is it the phone opening it up and then scrolling through this feed? And, like you said, the fact that you can see maybe something great like a movie still from, on Twitter, and then suddenly a couple of more scrolls, and, you see somebody getting beaten up in New York subway. It's so disturbing. I don't understand what the purpose of posting this is, unless this person has been arrested and something has actually happened. I don't understand what the purpose of everyone else seeing this. And I do think I maintain my position.
It is like we're living in Videodrome.
Yes, it is like Videodrome.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I've never seen that. Yes, I've never seen that film, but I've heard so much about it. Yes, it's this it's chaos, and I think that people are unable to distinguish it, between reality and this, virtual violence. But I don't see what the point is for us to see that. And I've said this before, where I don't think that people are able to mentally, they don't have mental stamina to be aware of everything all the time. This makes zero sense to me. And I love Jaron Lanier, or Jaron Lanier. I forget how to pronounce his name, but I don't know if you guys know about him. He's he's considered the father
Well,
of
yes,
virtual
I've read his
reality.
book, 10 Arguments.
Yes,
Was it 10 Arguments through your social media today? It's an incredible book.
yes, incredible. And also, You Are Not a Gadget. That's an earlier one. And he said recently something, because everybody's talking about AI. Have you noticed that everything now is AI? Like on Twitter, AI
Yes.
did this and AI did that, and there's pizza commercials created by AI. The AI is coming for you, and they're going to give you fake synthetic pizza. I mean, this is so silly, right? I just don't understand. And people were afraid. They're like, look, the robots are coming for us. That's it. We are done. We will become slaves. And I'm thinking to myself, you already are a slave to this corporate machine if you are believing this nonsense, But Lanier said something interesting about this. He doesn't think that there is such a thing as artificial intelligence, that it's impossible to even create it because there's nothing intelligent about it, in a sense. And he had said to say that something will be more intelligent than human is a contradiction, because it's created by a human being. So there's no possibility that you will have a more intelligent being than the human being, right? Meaning artificial being, right? And he thinks that all of what's going on right now, these sort of dystopian thoughts about androids or whomever, taking over, that these are just science fiction fantasies. That a lot of the creators of computer guys, really, that have been doing this, have their own little fantasies, and he definitely, shuts that down. But one thing that's interesting that he said, and I really agree with, is that this notion of transhumanism and AI, he talks about annihilation of humanity not through AI, but through humanity. He thinks that we are unable to actually communicate with each other anymore. And if we do annihilate the human race, it will be through insanity, through the fact that we will not be able to speak to one another anymore. And I find that more plausible, frankly, than being killed off by a machine. So I find him to be the voice of reason in all of this, discussion of artificial intelligence, or whatever they want to call it, because we need, where can computers really work? Where can they really be helpful? Are they tools, or are they something else, right? I think these are good philosophical questions. But to live in fear, I don't know. I don't know if you have seen this AI created pizza commercial when it came out.
Oh, yeah, I've seen it actually.
Yeah, yeah. It was
It's weird. It's weird looking. It's strange.
Is Dylan Mulvaney in it? Or
No.
no?
no.
Then you're not watching it, John. Is that what you're saying?
No. Yeah, I mean, I just don't know. So what happens in the commercial?
Oh, it's not just families like eating pizza, and it's sort of, it is an older style looking, like sort of like Pizza Hut sort of a commercial where people are eating, families are around eating pizza inside the restaurant, I think.
Yes, and it's called, what is it called? Pizza Hug something. I don't remember now. See, I forgot. But it's really weird because the
Oh,
way
I'm
it was
looking at images
created,
now. It looks terrifying.
it's awful. It's really
Yeah.
bizarre because people are they're eating, people. I mean, these are just sort of images created, right? When they're eating the pizza, it looks like they're eating their own chin. It just looks so strange. And so
Again,
it was
Cronenberg couldn't have directed a better commercial.
yeah. So, but I was struck by the reactions of people to this, as if the immediate reaction from many on Twitter was fear that we will be overtaken by this thing. and that we will be made obsolete. And then somebody after that made a kind of a Great Gatsby um, movie, all created by a computer. I hate it when they say that, though, because it isn't. A human being had to input certain information in order to get something spit back at them, right? So it really isn't created. The computer cannot create out of nothing, ex nihilo, right? Only God creates out of nothing. So to think that we can create out of nothing is crazy, but to think that a computer can do it is even crazier. I feel like we are moving actually backwards in time, if that makes sense. We have stopped progressing. I recently watched Kubrick's 2001: Space Odyssey, and I haven't seen it in decades. I think actually I have seen it only once when I was probably 9 or 10 years old. And at that point, I couldn't possibly understand it, the way I would today. And I was quite terrified of those apes and all of that at the beginning. And I really was. But anyway, we watched it, and it was beautiful. It was just absolutely so human and so beautiful, the whole thing. It was so moving. And my 6-year-old son watched it as well, and he absolutely loved it. He was not afraid of the apes the way I was.
They sort of look charmingly fake in a way now when
They do,
you
yeah.
look at those. It's almost a bit like Planet of the Apes, It's like
Yes. I mean, I couldn't obviously understand it when I was 10 or 9 or whenever I saw it, but it was an image that's burned in my memory. But what struck me about that is it's supposed to take place obviously really, really far away into the future, and the question being, what is our relation to this computer, to this HAL, right? That is wreaking havoc for these astronauts. But what struck me mostly about the film is that we are actually not progressing into anything right now. I think we are regressing existentially, metaphysically, in every aspect. Because if you look at the examples of what actually is going on, we are moving away further and further from the question of what it means to be human. And we are arguing about tan, right? Something, a made up article about tan. And I never really would have guessed that we would be at the point in our society where we are talking about what is male and what is female, biologically speaking. How absolutely crazy this is, right? So to me, arguing about those things, I would say, equals regression.
Well, perhaps one thing that AI can't do, and you've written about this film, maybe we can bring this into the discussion as well. There is no way an AI entity could create Ken Russell's Crimes of Passion.
No, definitely not.
China Blue, there's just no way that, I mean, it's too kinky for any machine out there.
Oh, a machine would blow up or something. Just seeing Kathleen Turner, it wouldn't know what to do with her.
But yes, I would love to know what you think of Crimes of Passion, and Ken Russell for that matter.
Well, I will be writing about it, but I can certainly talk about it as well. He did Women in Love, right? If I remember correctly, Ken Russell.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So I saw that a while ago when I was working on my bachelor's degree. I wrote my thesis on D.H. Lawrence on Women in Love, and I saw the movie as well. And I remember thinking the movie was quite dated. Actually, it's sort of stuck in its own sort of 70s, essence. But I really did think differently about Crimes of Passion. It's a very strange film, and I read Roger Ebert's review of it today from when it came out, and it was a terrible review, actually. He just dismissed the film as silly, as Ken Russell not knowing how to do sex scenes or something like that along those lines. And he said it was just stupid. And I really think it's a brilliant movie. I think it represents a certain window into several different worlds, one created by perhaps Georges Bataille and Marquis de Sade, another created by love. So I think the way he brings those things together in the film, where Russell brings those things together, yes, only a human being could create that, that's for sure. It's an interesting, I think it's an interesting, really, exploration of what constitutes eros, the erotic, and what's the difference between how connected is violence to sex, and it definitely you can see you can see maybe traces of that in Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, particularly because it deals with
Same ending.
marriage. Yes, right? Did you say same ending?
Yes, yeah. It's almost the same beat at the very end.
Completely. That's exactly what I thought. Yes, and there's a kind of almost cheekiness about it when he looks, because he looks right in the camera. You know, at the end there. So
because actually, there's a million reasons why these types of films. Because to give people a bit of context if they haven't seen it, it's an erotic thriller from the mid '80s. It just looks like it was, I don't know, made in some sort of coke frenzy at the time, and I feel like the idea of an erotic thriller today is completely beyond the pale. I just don't think you could imagine that, because we've talked about this before, maybe in different podcasts, like the idea of sex now being completely transactional or sterile, or this and I'm not taking anything away from assault and all that stuff, but this obsession with consent, because I feel like if you showed Crimes of Passion to someone, all they would talk about is consent, and you'd go, yeah, there's some other things going on in the film, but I feel like that would completely dominate and flatten the thing. And then the person would be in their review to you would be rather than talk about the transgressive elements in it and how outrageous it was or whatever, they would just say, oh, well, it wasn't very appropriate. And it's a conversation killer now.
Right. Yes, it wasn't appropriate, and that would be the end of it. And but in reality, I think the movie really deals with this, in my opinion, this notion of masks. And Bataille talked about that, and the idea of a mask obviously is a great metaphor. I wrote a lot about that actually for my Ph.D. dissertation. That was primarily what my dissertation was about. It was on eros, and really what the film is showing. There's particularly one scene where Kathleen Turner, so she's a designer, right, during the day, and then during the night she is China Blue, this prostitute. And I love the aesthetic difference also between the sort of red, almost like red light district type of place where she is a working girl, and then you have this almost a white sterile environment, right, where she is in her apartment as a designer. But there's a split of identity there, obviously, but there was something very real about it, despite the fact that there are these fantasies that are going on, these men that come to her, and then of course Anthony Perkins as the fake preacher who's trying to save her soul by murdering her, right? That's what he's trying to do. But we know at the end there who he's really trying to free, himself, and who is he anyway? Another pervert, right? So I think that the film is primarily
You've left out
about
the best bit, Amanda. You've buried the lead. He's trying to kill her with a handmade metallic member, I believe. Like a custom-made knife-like dildo.
Yes, it was. That was quite interesting. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm trying to trying to keep this very proper and appropriate. I don't want to trigger anybody.
Oh,
So
sorry.
really, that's what I'm trying to do here.
It's always
this out,
better to
cut this
talk about.
But yeah, no, I think the film really is about these split identities, and where does eros or where does sex belong into that, in these split identities? And I think particularly there's several very, very touching scenes. I think one is when she gets she goes to the house. A woman stops her, right? She on the street there, and says, "Can you come over? My husband is sick. He's dying. I can't even, do anything with him. Can you just, go over there and do your thing, please?" And she comes in. She's in her china blue outfit, right? She's sort of starting to give him these sort of cliched, pseudo erotic, expressions in sort of a very, very cheesy porno thing, going on. And the man is sick, clearly, right? He is just on his deathbed. And he rejects it, in a very sort of human way. And she recognizes his humanity at that point. She sits down with him. He tells her his name, right? And she says, "I am Joanna." She takes off her wig. And to me, that was a really beautiful moment, actually, because she is taking off that mask. She's being a human being. And if you notice, actually, when she comes into his room, she's being very sexy and very sultry, right, in that sort of role play. And when she's leaving, there's something almost limp about her body. She doesn't have her wig on, she doesn't have her dress on. Her lingerie is kind of hanging on. She's sort of a very sad woman in a way, but a very human. So that's why I don't think the movie is. I think it's a very underrated movie. I honestly, there's some strange stuff, but I've seen stranger movies that were also extremely voyeuristic. I kept thinking about Cronenberg's Crash. That's a screwed up movie, and I can understand Death Drive and Freud and Bataille and all of those things. But I always got the feeling that Cronenberg was really a voyeur in this movie, that he was, getting off on it, and I didn't like that. I think that's what it was. With Russell, I felt like he really was kind of just separated as a filmmaker from this, and I do appreciate that. But there is, and even the very moving moments between Bobby and his wife, when they're in bed, and he's trying to, he's not just trying to have sex with her, right? He's really trying to have intimacy with her, and he even tells her that. And she still rejects him. So she's rejecting his entire being, right? So, but anyway, I thought the film was
It seems that, I mean, it just seems like the causes and conditions that created Ken Russell are long gone, and it actually seems like there's guardrails put in place to stop people like him even existing at all. So, because at the end of the day, we know that big time artists like him, they don't say nice things all the time. Like if you've ever heard David Lynch behind the scenes or videos of him on set, he's screaming and yelling. He's saying, "Fuck that, fuck you. Who cares how
right.
who cares how long the fucking scene is?" And he's just like, sort of a tyrant. And and in a world where you need to watch your mouth, this is sort of death to these kinds of artists. Because I mean, we even see it with our heroes. We go on about this. Like, I am staggered by the silence of Martin Scorsese and everyone else. I am just blown away that they will not say anything about how stupid this prevailing ideology, this anti-art ideology is out there. Because, and the net result is that we get very bland movies, but then, these guys have got to sort of trick their way into making movies. Like if Ken Russell was around now, who knows, maybe he'd have to do what they all do, which is find an identity politics way into the story, like make it about Native Americans or make it about, like, I don't know, so just find a way in and then say, okay, now that or just endlessly say Latinx like Spielberg and then go, okay, maybe they'll let me direct the movie now. And then, it's just such a pathetic way of going about it, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. It's a very cowardly, unmasculine way of way of doing things, especially certainly if the director is a man. It's even worse. Yes, and where is the imagination? I mean, reject or accept a movie based on its aesthetics and based on its merit. Make the movie that you want to make, write the book that you want to write, and then the rest of the people can either reject it or accept it. But it has to be accepted or rejected based on what it is, not whether it hit the right ideology or it didn't, or whatever. I can't even imagine actually how would people react to something like Crimes of Passion right now.
We
It's
talk about this all the time. When we review these movies, we always say, could you play this on a campus? Could you play it for normal people? Could you put it on somewhere? Could you project it somewhere? And what would the reaction be? What would people know what they're looking at? How would they respond? Would people get angry? Would they assault you? Would they burn the place down? Or would they not care? Which there's all sorts of cases where we're convinced they wouldn't care because these people, they don't watch movies. They don't watch good movies. They don't watch Fear It's the Soul. They don't watch anything like this. Or if they would rather complain about it and try and get it bad and make sure that there's a trigger warning before rather than actually watch it and engage with this.
Right. Yeah, please tell me what the trigger warning is so I can then make a decision whether I want to watch it or not. No, I don't. Of course, I completely disagree with that. That sounds crazy to me. To have a trigger warning, I don't even know what that means. Either live your life or don't live your life. I think really that's what it comes down to. Why are people so content with living a half life? And it seems to me, in any case, and maybe somebody like Camille Paglia would agree with this. I think she sort of talks about a lot of this in Sexual Personae, is that if there is no erotic drive at all, then I think we're all doomed. And I am not surprised, at the way the society is right now, given the fact that everyone has overnight become such a prude, where what you are not the only thing that's acceptable, if you notice, the only thing that's acceptable is to be fearful and violent, and maybe that proves Bataille's point, or point of Wilhelm Reich, who talked about ideology and I mean, Reich was a crazy guy. He did some strange things, but I think that as did Bataille. But I guess maybe they're right in a sense that people are getting a release from ideology rather than from sex or from eros or from or from an encounter with other people. You really just kind of want to say to them, is there nothing that excites you? Do you not have passion for anything at all? And to me, that's very, very sad, extremely.
Well, I mean, we're very mindful of time. We could chat to you all day about all these different topics, particularly cinema. We'd love to talk to you about cinema. I wanted to ask you briefly about your Substack. It's called The Magic Lantern. Maybe you could let our listeners know what that is. And I believe you've added something called Friday Frames. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. Thank you so much for mentioning that. I just have to keep up after it. So the Substack is eminamelonic.substack.com. It's called The Magic Lantern. And so I post my articles there, but I'm also trying to have this little section called Friday Frames, as you said, and where I recommend a movie every Friday. Do a little bit of a write-up, nothing major, just why the movie matters to me and what the film is about. And what I try to do is try to find a film that is available, preferably for free, but if it's not, it's not, so that people can see it. So I think that's important too. But yeah, so and I'm on Twitter. Same Twitter handle is Emina Melonic, just my name. So people can look up my work like that too. So, but I write a weekly column for American Greatness, and usually a weekly column for Splice Today and other places too. So
Excellent. Well, everyone should check that out. And one of the missions we have on this show is we're trying to get people to read more. And I've actually started in sort of in my personal life asking people if they're reading anything at the moment. So
How's
not
that
just
going?
asking on this podcast. It actually is not going too badly, actually. I'm surprised that people are reading something. It's not usually the kind of books that I think they should be reading, but that's okay. I think if you're just reading full stop, I think you're ahead of the game. So this is a question, as you know, we ask all of our guests, and we'd like to know what you're reading right now, Emina.
Well, I try to read things. I read so much for the reviews that I'm doing. So, and that sometimes feels like work. So I really try to read something before I go to bed that's completely, unrelated to work. And I picked up a book a few days ago by Pearl Buck. Peony. Is that how you pronounce it? Tell me. Peony, the flower, right? Yes.
I don't know. I'm embarrassed. No, I'm not embarrassed. I
Is that
don't
how
know.
you pronounce it? Okay. So the film. See, I'm already thinking about only the film. Anyway, the book is just like most of her books takes place in China. So, and it's about this servant girl who is working in a Jewish family in China. So so far it's really good. I mean, I just wanted to read something that's completely, unrelated to anything that I'm doing right now.
No culture war stuff.
No, I can't. I also I have a terrible habit of being distracted, and so I start too many books. And they get finished, but I just, what's the next shiny thing? And then I just forget about the other. It's a terrible habit. It's awful. I don't know how I write anything at all, I'll be honest with you. It's, but it's not a computer. The computer is not writing my articles. It is all me.
It is. It's 100% you. It's not ChatGPT churning out this
Definitely
stuff.
Not.
Well, thank you so much, Emina, for catching up with us again. And please send us through your Crimes of Passion article. Can't wait. And I'm so glad we got to talk about that, among other things, today.
Absolutely. I always love talking to you both. It's always such a pleasure, and I'm just as glad you invite me every time. So that's great.
Excellent. Well, we'll see you next time.
Sounds good.
Thank you for listening to the New Flesh podcast. If you like our work, please consider rating us on Apple Podcasts or even writing us a review. It really does help the show reach a wider audience. We'll be back with another episode next week. Until then, long live the New Flesh.